my pleasure being in Brazil for the second time. The first time was in 2009 when I and Professor Arnaldo organized the first international conference on cybercrime here in Praia, and I'm here again for another adventure, another milestone, another international conference on a new topic, fighting cybercrime and the challenges of artificial intelligence. It's my pleasure being with you today. It's my pleasure being with you today and tackling this challenge. We will deal with new aspects and new topics, and at the end of my presentation, we'll deal with the questions. So in fact, we'll start by some important basics in cybercrime, the definition of cybercrime, the meaning of cybercrime. According to Don Parker is an American scholar who has written many articles and many books on cybercrime. According to him, cybercrime means any intentional act where a victim suffered or could have suffered a loss, and a perpetrator may have made a gain and is associated with computers and is associated with information technology. And in this definition, we have three roles played by computers and networks. Either they are the target of the crime, such as in those attacks in malicious codes, or either they are a tool for the crime, such as in child pornography, internet fraud, online theft, or either essential for the commission of the crime, such as the mailers and drug dealers. If we have a look about cyberspace and why it is a big opportunity for cyber criminals and what is the advantage of using information technology, especially to target online users, we have 5.75 billion surfers online in 2024, and we had 7 trillion web pages accessible on the internet, 3.2 billion Google searches per month, and 12% of all the global trade happens now online. With the expansion of the internet, with the increase in the number of internet users, we have more offenders, and accordingly, we have more victims. In India, we have 833 million internet users. Here in Brazil, according to recent statistics, in 2024, we had 188 million internet users. In the United States, 312 million internet users, and in Japan, 116 million internet users, and the total internet users in 2024 is 5.35. This means that the penetration is almost 92% or 93% from the total citizens worldwide, and there is an increase in the number of internet users, and accordingly, there is an increase in the crimes being committed online daily. What is the current status of cybercrime legislation worldwide? In fact, we have almost 80% of all countries worldwide that have adopted cybercrime legislation. Europe has the highest portion. Europe has the highest rate with almost 94% or 93%. We have some countries that are working on tracks. Arab countries are doing a great work. Currently we have 16 countries out of 21 Arab countries that have adopted cybercrime legislation. The first Arab country, the United Arab Emirates, that adopted its law in 2006. The second country was Saudi Arabia in 2007. Egypt and Lebanon adopted their legislations in 2018. The last Arab country was Jordan that adopted its law in 2023. So everything is going okay on the international level at cybercrime legislation. However, we can fight against cybercrime and we can tackle cybercrime without having a specific law and a specific legislation, because offenders rely on loopholes in the countries with no legislations to pass from and to escape from. I think all of you know the history of I Love You virus that targeted international servers and international networks, and it came from the Philippines, and at this time the Philippines didn't have a specific legislation to tackle cybercrime, and the offenders escaped from this loophole and they couldn't be prosecuted because Philippines at this time didn't have a specific legislation. In 2024, we suffered a lot from malware distribution techniques. If you don't know malware distribution techniques, it is in fact the distribution of malicious tools and malicious applications via emails and attachments, and users can download this from websites and from attachments of emails and from several attachments, and cyber criminals can inject malware into legitimate websites, affecting in fact the visitors and affecting the internet users. And malware are very, very, very dangerous and are very, very, very effective because they can result in data loss, in financial theft, that are being committed in phishing attacks, in smishing attacks, and the disruption in business operations, and they have an impact on financial theft and financial loss, and can lead to financial losses to the theft of banking information and the ransom theft. Also, before 2024, during the corona pandemic, we suffered a lot from the ransom attacks, sending malware applications to internet users and encrypting all the data of their computers and of their networks and requesting a ransom to be credited back, and this has increased a lot during the pandemic, and this means that cyber criminals and offenders are abandoning themselves to the situation and to the environment surrounding them to commit their offenses and to commit financial losses and to commit thefts and to steal the money. Of course, also in 2024, we suffered a lot from the scams on cryptocurrency platforms and the scams of investing in cryptocurrency, and of course, this is done in fake platforms, and once you submit your money and once you purchase cryptocurrency, this cryptocurrency will disappear from the fake platforms. What is the current situation in Brazil? Everything started in Brazil in 2012 with Carolina Dickman law, the law number 12 for 2012. It was enacted after a famous case where a Brazilian actress, Carolina, personal photos were leaked, and the cyber criminals have access to their personal information, and they committed a breach of security and interception of communication and data manipulation. After that, we have the Marco Civil Data of Internet, and this is considered the Internet Constitution here in Brazil that establishes principles and rights and responsibilities for Internet users and providers, and the government protects the freedom of expression on the Internet, and this introduces legal obligations for data protection and privacy and transparency here in Brazil. After that, we have the General Data Protection Law that was enacted in 2018, and this General Data Protection Law is in fact inspired by the European GDPR. All of you know by heart the European GDPR that was enacted in Europe. This law is inspired by the European GDPR, and it regulates the personal data and the protection and the processing of personal data here in Brussels, and we have fines and sanctions that are being applied for the non-compliance. We have a new cybercrime law that was enacted in 2021, and this new cybercrime law amended, in fact, the Brazilian penal code to increase penalties on new threats and new crimes that were being committed in cyberspace, such as cyber fraud and offenses targeting financial transactions, and it has sanctions up to 8 years for crimes such as phishing and identity. It's very important, and it has been an excellent initiative from Brussels to adopt its legislation. And let me tell you that this initiative has also been followed by many Arab countries. The United Arab Emirates, for example, as I mentioned, was the first country to adopt legislation in 2006 and amended its legislation several times to be updated according to new offenses committed online. Jordan as well, which is the last country to adopt a specific legislation in cybercrime in 2023, had a previous legislation and had modified to be adopted. Let me tell you, as an expert in cybercrime, it is not sufficient enough to have a law or to have a legislation in cybercrime, but we must update our legislation regularly. We must update our legislation regularly because the development of information technology is done very quickly. The offenses we are talking about today will totally change after 2 and 3 years. And we cannot rely on a legislation that was adopted some years ago to tackle the future offenses and to tackle the future crimes, but having a legislation is an important point to fight against cybercrime. What is the economic impact of cybercrime in 2024? In fact, the annual cost of cybercrime globally is $1 trillion. You imagine the annual cost is $1 trillion each year from cybercrime lost, and the direct losses is $600 billion. That's what the internet users loses from scams and offenses being committed online. We have $200 billion the recovery costs from the incidents, and we have 60% of companies in 2024 were affected by cyber crimes. In fact, let me tell you that cyber criminals are not interested in traditional and in normal internet users. They are more interested in big firms, in big names, in big companies where they can blackmail them, where they can access their data and put on the dark web. The dark web currently represents the major challenge for law enforcement. I don't know whether you know the dark web or not. For those of you who don't know the dark web, let's explain very quickly some basics. The internet is classified into 3 main categories, 3 main layers, 3 main levels. The first level is a surface web, that's the internet that we use, and you will be surprised if you know that the internet, that this level, the whole world use, doesn't exceed 4% from the internet in the world. Where is the 96%? The 96% is the second and third level. The second level is what we call the deep web, and the third level is called the dark web. To access the dark web, it's very easy. All you need is to have a browser that's available online, which is named Tor. Tor is the onion router. Why do we call it the onion router? Because it's like the onion. It consists of layers. If you look at an onion, we have layers. And this browser, in fact, does to the computer, it encrypts all the transactions of the computer into layers, and accordingly it will be very difficult for you as a law enforcement to trace the computer accessing the dark web. The dark web represents a big challenge. On the dark web, you can buy drugs, you can buy arms, you can buy child pornography material, you can access sensitive data, you can buy fake passports, and you are dealing with the members of organized crime. You are dealing with a member of organized crime who are very professional in sending these documents and in trafficking these documents to any place worldwide. So, back to statistics of 2024, we have 50% in 2024 rise in cyber threats and increase in cyber threats, and 70% of the attacks in 2024 of cyber crimes were being targeting small businesses, and it is expected that the number from 1 trillion will rise to 6 trillion by the end of 2025, increase in the costs of cyber crimes. So, what are the challenges faced by law enforcement? What are the challenges that you may face when dealing with cyber crimes? First of all, the technological demands. You must adapt yourself to the use of technology. You must train yourself to the use of technology to fight cyber crime. Secondly, we have specialized skills required. We can deal with cybercrime in a traditional way. We can fight cybercrime by the same way we are fighting physical crime. Cybercrime needs special tools and needs special skills, and traditional crimes need its tools. Secondly, evolving tactics of cyber criminals. Let me tell you that we are not dealing with a traditional offender. The cyber criminal is not a traditional offender. He is someone who knows computer science, who is professional in IT, who is professional in networks and computers, and who knows the loopholes, and who knows the vulnerabilities in systems to commit his or her crimes. We are not dealing with a traditional crime. We are not dealing with robbery or theft or kidnapping, etc., etc. Cyber criminals are very professional, and the tactics are very evolving day after day. So we must adapt ourselves. After that, we must understand the complex technologies. We must understand the technologies being used by cyber offenders and being used by cyber criminals to adapt ourselves and to find the tools to tackle these crimes. So, what are the emerging trends in cybercrime? First of all, using artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence currently represents a major challenge for law enforcement being used by cyber criminals. Artificial intelligence is being used in committing attacks and in finding victims and blackmailing victims and doing child pornography content and cyberbullying, etc. Secondly, the rise of cybercrime as a service, and on the dark web we have many offenders who provide services for internet users. If you want to create a deep fake media, you just pay me $100 and I will create a deep fake media for you. If you would like to buy a stolen credit card which is active, it costs $20. If you want to buy drugs, it costs $100. So many cyber criminals and many offenders provide the services on the dark web. I'm repeating, the dark web represents a major challenge. How can we tackle the dark web? How can we face the challenges of the dark web? Let me tell you very honestly that to fight and to tackle the offenses of the dark web, the solution is to cut the internet from the world. Because the dark web is a part of the internet. The dark web represents 96% of the internet. Some countries, like Lebanon for example, has a technical solution. If you install the Tor browser on your computer to access the dark web, the internet is cut from your computer. And accordingly, you are unable to access the dark web. Or if you use a VPN to download Tor to access the dark web and to mask your identity, the internet service provider will report this issue to law enforcement. These are some of the solutions. However, they can be overcome by cyber criminals. Tor, for example, the recent version of Tor, which is used to access the dark web, has installed a VPN inside itself, so you no longer need to have a VPN to overcome this challenge. Secondly, we have the challenges for the methods being used by cyber criminals and regulating the updated tactics and regulating the updated techniques used by offenders and innovative cybersecurity strategies. We must have an innovation in cybersecurity strategies. We shouldn't rely on traditional ways to deal with cybercrime because we are dealing with intelligent offenders, we are dealing with intelligent cyber criminals who use up-to-date technologies and up-to-date methods in committing these crimes. Securing critical infrastructure from cyber threats is very, very, very important. If I want to have a disruption on a country or affect a country, I will target its critical infrastructure. I will not hack its website because it won't have a good effect. I will target its critical infrastructure. Nowadays, all countries and all infrastructure in all countries rely on information technology. So targeting the computer systems and targeting the networks of these countries will have a very big impact on these countries. Let me remind you, when the war started between Russia and Ukraine, Russia used to attack the critical infrastructure in Ukraine by special IT professionals and special IT groups to have a great impact on this country while the war is on the ground. So protecting and securing the critical infrastructure from cyber threats is very important. Cyber criminals target vital systems and the threat to the national security of countries and the threat to the public safety of countries by targeting the critical infrastructure. These attacks can affect power grids, for example, can attack transport systems, can affect healthcare services, can affect millions of services that are being provided to citizens in these countries. So we need a robust cybersecurity strategy. We need to implement a strong cybersecurity measures for the protection of critical infrastructure, and this in fact requires a cooperation between the government and the private entities and IT professionals to share information and to increase the awareness. Increasing the awareness within internet users is very important. In some countries, some internet users or some persons don't know the difference between the internet and the email, for example. So without having an awareness within the internet users, and that's the role of public entities and private entities at the same time. In Egypt, when cyber criminals started to target internet users by phishing attacks, banks started to send SMS to its clients to tell them that we will never request your personal information, we will never request your credit card information, and they started to do this role in the media and on social media as a part of an awareness campaign. So raising the awareness is very important. At the same time, adopting best practices and adhering to cybersecurity best practices will ensure that we are protecting against evolving threats and recent threats. At the same time, we should have an incident response planning. An incident response planning in each country. For example, at the Ministry of Interior, we have a special unit or a special service that receives the complaints from internet users and start to deal with it and analyze it and report it to the prosecutors and to the judges to prosecute the offenders. Okay, now to a very important point, artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is playing an important role, either in committing cyber crimes or either as a tool used by law enforcement to tackle cyber crime. What is the implication of artificial intelligence in cybersecurity? First of all, we have the privacy issue. We must design the artificial intelligence tool to respect and to safeguard individual privacy rights. Safeguarding individual privacy rights and protecting personal data and protecting confidentiality is very important. Secondly, to prevent algorithmic bias. Algorithmic bias is a major challenge when using artificial intelligence. If you as a law enforcement are using artificial intelligence in analyzing data or on searching and seizing for additional evidence, etc., you must check the outcome of these tools or these programs. You mustn't rely on their output 100% because we suffer in artificial intelligence from algorithmic bias. Sometimes the result is not correct. Sometimes the result prefers a race or a country or assets or something like that. So we should supervise the results used and gained by artificial intelligence. Thirdly, transparency. Enhancing transparency in AI algorithms will help users to have a good decision and promote a good decision. So we must know what the artificial intelligence tells us and filters the results and take what we take and leave what we leave. AI is currently being used in many countries worldwide as a source in gathering digital evidence and in analyzing data taken and seized from computers. In the past, the digital forensic expert used to spend long time in analyzing the data seized from computers and networks, and this in fact affected justice and affected the trials. Nowadays, law enforcement and digital forensic experts rely on artificial intelligence as a tool to analyze the data and to present the digital evidence to the prosecutor. However, we have some challenges. First of all, the big volume of data. In some cases, we are dealing with a hard disk that has 3 tera or 4 tera of data, which takes long time to analyze this data. I have delivered many training courses to prosecutors worldwide, and I tell them, when you issue a search warrant to the law enforcement or to the digital forensic expert, don't just tell him, have a look at this hard disk and search it. You must precise in details what he shall look for, what you are looking for. Are you looking for terrorism material, child pornography material, cyberbullying material, etc., etc. So you must determine in your search warrant, you must issue it in details, because the digital forensic expert can take long time to search for the data and seize the data. So one of the challenges that we face is a large volume of data. The second challenge, as I mentioned, is the bias issue. We must make sure that AI tools are free from bias to maintain the integrity and fairness of the outcome. You can't rely 100% on an AI tool. You must check what the AI tool has given to you, what is the outcome, what is relevant to the case. It's currently like ChatGPT. Sometimes we use ChatGPT in our research and the outcome is 100% nonsense. It's totally different from what we have requested. And ChatGPT is currently a major challenge for us as professors in universities, because the students find it an easy tool to do the assignment and to do the research, and by our expertise we can determine, without even checking it on term in program, we can know whether this assignment has been written by an AI tool or not. So it is the same issue in digital forensics. The expert can use AI as a tool and as a medium to analyze the data. However, he must analyze the outcome of the AI and filter the AI and takes what he needs and leaves what he doesn't want. What is the future of AI in cyber ethics and law? I think and I predict in the future that we will rely 80% or 90% on the AI technologies. I don't say that AI is very bad. AI has advantages and disadvantages. AI is very useful for law enforcement, for example, using it in airports and using it on highways to track speeding or to track offenders in the airports or at the borders, etc., etc. It's very important, and it has made a revolution in policing and helps a lot with the policing. However, it has some disadvantages that we can try to overcome, and we can try to take the advantages. In fact, the technological advancements in AI also needs regulatory frameworks, and needs us to address the issue of data privacy and algorithm bias. Data privacy is very important. Privacy is one of the important constitutional rights. I didn't read the Brazilian Constitution, but I'm sure 100% that in the Brazilian Constitution there are many articles, or at least one article, that talks about the protection of privacy rights of Brazilian citizens and how it should be respected by several authorities. That's not only the case in Brazil, that's the case in France, in the United States, in each one country, in Saudi Arabia, etc. So one of the challenges is a violation of privacy when using artificial intelligence. Also in the future, one of the challenges is the recognition of the AI outcome by judges in the courts. Whether the evidence and whether the outcome of the AI will be recognized by a judge in a court, this needs a long discussion. However, if we have a regulation and if you have law texts and if we have legislation that recognizes the use of AI in digital forensics and recognizing the use of AI as a tool by law enforcement, this in fact will have an excellent impact in the judicial system and in the trial process. And we will return back to what I have mentioned at the beginning of this presentation. We shouldn't rely on adopting a specific legislation. We must update it. What we have talked about in 2009 in our conference here in Paraíba has totally changed today. We didn't talk about artificial intelligence at this time. We didn't talk about the digital forensics. We didn't talk about the deepfake technology, the dark fake, etc., etc. And if you organize another conference after some years here in Paraíba, we have new challenges. That's the technology. And that's the major challenge of cybercrime. The evolution in cybercrime and the advancement in the crimes committed by cyber offenders is very, very, very big, and we must overcome these challenges by the training of law enforcement, by adopting cybercrime legislations, etc. Another regulation of and another challenges of the AI is the liability and determining the accountability of the consequences of the AI actions. Sometimes the AI, the technology itself, commits a crime without the intervention of an offender, and this represents a challenge to law enforcement and to judges at the court. Are we going to consider the AI a human being that's accountable for the offenses committed, such as the case of the robots? The new versions and the recent generation of robots, for example, with the machine learning, they are capable of taking decisions without the intervention of a human being. And this hasn't been solved today. Can we consider this technology accountable for the offenses that have been committed or not? They don't have the stature of a human being, and we can say that a robot is responsible for a crime if it has committed this crime without intervention. Whether it will be the responsibility of the programmer or the manufacturer or the person using it, so that's one of the challenges determining the accountability. Also, in regulating the use of AI, that's one of the challenges, as I mentioned, and to have updates in our laws and legislations about all trends in using AI in committing offenses. That's very important. Australia is the latest country working on a cybercrime legislation. Its law is a very, very long one. I advise you to have a look on this bill, on the current bill. It's available online, and it has some articles and some clauses dealing with artificial intelligence and using with artificial intelligence technology to commit offenses and to commit crimes. So it's worth reading it. International cooperation in cyber law is very important. We can tackle cybercrime without having international cooperation. We are dealing with an offense that cuts across territorial borders. An offender in Brazil hacks a computer in Egypt and uses this computer to target a victim in Saudi Arabia. what is the appropriate jurisdiction? What's the applicable law? Will it be the Brazilian law because the offender is Brazilian? Will it be the Egyptian law because he used a computer in Egypt? Will it be the Saudi law because the victim is Saudi and Saudi Arabia has a legislation? We can overcome these challenges by international cooperation. We can have mechanisms for cooperation. Currently, we have 4 international conventions on cybercrime. The first one was Budapest Convention that is adopted by the Council of Europe and opened for signature in 2001 and entered into force in 2004, and this convention is open for the whole world, and the United States and Japan and Canada and several countries outside the Council of Europe has adopted this convention. The second convention that we have is the Arab Convention on Cybersecurity and Cybercrime, and this convention is addressed to the Arab nation and to the Arab states. It has been proposed by the Arab League to Arab nations to have an international cooperation within the Arab region to fight and to tackle cybercrime. The third one is Malabo Convention, and I am the drafter of this convention, and I presented it to the African Union. Malabo Convention is addressed to the African nations. The latest convention worldwide was just adopted some months ago in December 2024, which is the United Nations Convention on Cybercrime. The United Nations Convention on Cybercrime is the latest convention worldwide to tackle cybercrime, and it was adopted by the General Assembly of the United Nations in 2024. It didn't enter into force yet because we didn't reach the sufficient number of ratifications by United Nations members. So we have several conventions. Even if we have a specific legislation, it's very important to ratify these conventions. These conventions are very important. They allow us to issue search warrant for digital evidence that is found outside our borders, outside our territorial borders, the cooperation between law enforcement. For example, Budapest Convention has the 7 over 24-hour cooperation between the countries that ratified this convention, and cooperation between law enforcement to search and seize the digital evidence. As I mentioned, the latest convention worldwide is the United Nations Convention that was adopted in the General Assembly of the United Nations in 2024, but it didn't enter into force yet. It is very important as a law enforcement to have a specific training in cybercrime. You must update your skills, and you must update your information, and you must follow up recent trends in cybercrime. I don't know if you have in Brazil a special unit at the Ministry of Interior dedicated to cybercrime or not, or whether the civil police or the traditional police are dealing with these offenses. But we in Egypt, for example, we have a specific unit at the Ministry of Interior dealing with cybercrime that was constructed in 2010, and it receives all complaints from internet users and reports all these incidents to specific prosecutors. Also in Egypt, we have special judges, highly trained, dealing with cybercrimes, and they are working in circles of what we call economic courts. Economic courts are dealing with money laundering offenses, with cyber crimes, and all crimes that affect financial issues and affects finance. So we have a trained judges dealing with these offenses. So training is very important. Training is very important for law enforcement working in cybercrime. to recognize the threats and secure data handling and deal with digital evidence. Dealing with digital evidence is very important. If the digital evidence has been abused by the expert or the law enforcement dealing with it, in such a case, the offender will escape from this loophole, and accordingly, he couldn't be tried and he couldn't be prosecuted. At the same time, using updated. Do I still have time? 5 minutes? Okay. Okay. It's very essential to use updated cybersecurity tools. Cyber offenders are using IT tools and information technology tools to commit their crimes. Accordingly, we fight them by the same tools, but fighting them with advanced tools to overcome these challenges. So we fight cybercrime by having updated cybersecurity tools, and using artificial intelligence in threat detection. It's very important. It can detect and it can predict. I had a lecture some months ago in Spain about human trafficking, and I presented to the law enforcement how we can use artificial intelligence in tackling human trafficking online. Human trafficking has moved from the physical space to cyberspace, and currently many websites are deceiving poor people, okay, and giving them the impression that they will move to a new country with a high standard of life and with a high level of life, and once they arrive, their passports are being seized and they are being abused and applied if they are women or girls and working in prostitution, or if they are men and working in farms, etc. So artificial intelligence can be used as a tool. So using artificial intelligence is currently the fashion to tackle these threats. As I mentioned, the international conventions are very important, whether the Budapest Convention or the United Nations Convention, because we have harmonization of national laws, and once you have ratified this convention, you will adopt and you will change your laws according to this convention. Also, we have enhanced investigative techniques and the utilization of tools to trace offenders online and the search and seizure of digital evidence and the protection of system availability, etc. Of course, we have some challenges in adopting cyber laws. First of all, the rapid technological advancements. Is a major challenge in adopting cyber laws. If we have a law that dates 10 years back or 15 years back, it is not a law, and it will not be sufficient to tackle these offenses. Secondly, we have different laws across jurisdictions. The major challenge, if we don't have a cyber law, that an offense can be considered legal in a country and illegal in another country. And if it is considered illegal in another country, and I requested the prosecution of the offender in his own country, the prosecutor will say, that's not an offense in my own country, my citizen didn't commit an offense. So we overcome this challenge by the adoption and ratification of international conventions. Also, at the same time, handling and regulating cyberspace is a difficult mission, because we are dealing with a virtual space, we are dealing with a borderless space which doesn't know territorial borders and the advancement in this cyberspace is very challenging. I don't want to exceed my time. I have finished my presentation, and that's my email. Okay, we open the floor for questions.